Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted, episode 692. I'm Kevin Carlson.
I'm George Conger. Today is October 15th, 2021.
All right, welcome to the Friday edition of Anglican Unscripted. We're halfway through October and got lots of news to report. But before we get too far, you know how this works. There's right in front of your face, somewhere on that screen, there's a thumb. You click the thumb. It's free advertising for George and I. Please share this episode with your friends, family, foes. We don't mind who. Just please share. I can monitor the sharing. More sharing is going on, and I appreciate that very much. It's also free advertising. Go to the comment section. You've been doing that very faithfully. We appreciate that. Subscribe to the show if you're not subscribed yet. And we have a podcast for those who don't want to see our faces on screen. I mean, look at the wrinkles, George. I understand if you want to do the podcast only. George, lots of news this week. Kevin, where are you? We're leaving the Mammoth Cave area and we're starting a tour further south. We're going to hit Bowling Green, Nashville, Pigeon Forge, Savannah, Charleston, and then head on into Florida, where I have a home residence on a cement pad. George, how you been doing?
Pretty good. It's been a busy week. I just look forward to work this Sunday. It's a wonderful life here in Florida.
Sure. Well, now we tell our audience when we need prayer. And George, you got some muscle issues and you need a little bit of prayer. What should our audience be praying for?
Well, 4 weeks ago, I was clearing up a downed tree in the yard. A part of an oak tree came down. And Susan always nags me not to play with the chainsaw because I'm going to cut something off. Well, I hurt myself, but I didn't hurt myself with the chainsaw. I was dragging the pieces to the front to be picked up, and I stepped in a hole. And since that time, I've had a really painful Charlie horse, which is a strained thigh muscle, and I developed bursitis in my hip. So the doctor gave me a cortisone shot in the joint, and that seems to be taking care of the hip pain. But the Charlie horse has taken an awful long time to heal, and so I'm hobbling around like an old man. And if I'm a little slower than normal, the doctor recently put me on some muscle relaxants. So that and a fifth of scotch really.
Yeah, geez, muscle relaxants and being a host on a audible format show is not a good friend. But do keep George in your prayer. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing worse than having a muscle injury. I know, because I'm in my mid-50s now. If my pillows are not in the correct position at night and I fall asleep strangely, I'm out for a whole week. Something back there is just not working. And it's an age thing. It's hard to recover. It takes a lot longer. They say rest, ice it, compress it, and elevate it. Good luck, George. All right, so do keep George in your prayers. Lots of news. And most of you are tuned in for one story. And do we do that story first, or we save it to the end as a cliffhanger? Let's do it first. Michael.
What about the good news story?
Oh, yeah. Let's do the good one. The good one is oddly a boldly story. George, Captain Kirk, William Shatner, the very good-looking 90-year-old, went into space with the help of Jeff Bezos. And that's exciting, because the show appeared first in 67, 68, 69. And it was a brand new show called Star Trek, and it didn't really get a lot of traction until it was finally canceled. But all my life, I've identified sci-fi with William Shatner, Captain T. Kirk, and that genre until the mid-70s when Star Wars came around. And to watch the man who, exemplified space actually get to space in a non-fiction form is really cool, George.
Just imagine, William Shatner was born only 5 years after the first commercial aviation flight was launched. And now here he is in his 90th year, being one of the first, I think the first, paying passenger to travel into outer space.
Yeah.
It was part of a crew of 4, and I think 3 were paying passengers to go be shot into space. When was it, Wednesday or Thursday? Wednesday,
I think it was Wednesday. Yeah.
And I really, I always enjoyed William Shatner. Some people like to rag him for being a bit of an over-actor, but he doesn't take himself so seriously that he's not pompous. He's just who he is.
Well, you can tell
reaction.
You could tell he was a Shakespearean trained actor. That overemphasis, that delivering half a line before the other half of a line, that's Shakespearean training. And, he did it so well, and he brought that into that sci-fi genre where Shakespeare should not belong. Yet a lot of their stories in Star Trek were Shakespearean, too, so...
Well, I just was touched by his reaction when he came back down to Earth. Just the tears of joy and the excitement, and it just was a wonderful, wonderful thing to see. And don't we live in a remarkable world where such things are now possible? It's just neat.
Yeah, it is.
I have enjoyed all the Facebook memes of everybody, let's dress up like we're characters from the Planet of the Apes. So when he gets back from his trip to space, so it's a lot of fun.
No, it was a lot of fun. But I'm wondering if Jeff was able to charge the other 2 passengers more, because, hey, you're going with Captain Kirk. I'm going to charge you a little more for the trip. But, it's interesting. Space travel is now commercial, and we shall see how that plays out in the long term. Long after you and I are dead, something's going to happen with commercial space travel. So, who knows? All right, here we go. Big story of the week. Michael Nazarali, former bishop in the Church of England, has decided to go back to the Roman Catholic Church. That's the story I woke up to yesterday. It was in my Facebook feed and in my WhatsApp, and George sent me a couple stories and said, you said in a sense, disappointing but not surprising. And that was kind of my reaction too. Because a lot of people look to Michael Nazarali as an Orthodox Anglican. Some say he's an Anglo-Catholic Anglican, or was at the time, and that he represented our hope and our future in many different ways. And yes, there is an aspect to that, but Michael Nazarali also, this is going to surprise a lot of our audience, he authored the Rochester Report, which was the Church of England's permission report to go forward with women bishops. He's taking that with him to the Roman Catholic Church. So, hey, there's a lot here to unpack, George.
Yes, it was disappointing. It was announced yesterday that on the Feast of St. Michael and All Angels, which was the end of September, Michael Nazarali was received into the Catholic Church. And he is going to pursue ordination to the priesthood in the Catholic Church. And that was a disappointing announcement. Disappointing because Michael Nazarali had played a very important role in the fights to renew and revive Anglican orthodoxy, the reforming spirit in the Anglican world over the past generation. There's no naysaying his contributions. But at the same time, the sort of Roman Catholic controversialists, the people who are always attacking other faith traditions, their celebration and their claims are a bit excessive, that this is the most important conversion from the Church of England in X years since this person or that person. Yes, it is important that Michael Nazarali converted and became a Roman Catholic, as it is as important as a local dog catcher converts, a soul gained for what the Catholics believe to be the true church. Will this affect in any way the Anglican world? No. Will it affect the Church of England situation? Perhaps. But in the wider Anglican world, no, it will not have any effect.
It's a disappointing development. I was thinking about it yesterday. The biggest question I have now is what's going to happen to the book he's writing about Anglicanism that we talked about last week. He's writing a book. What's he going to say? Anglicanism sucks? Yeah, okay, absolutely. There's a lot of problems with Anglicanism. Absolutely. But it doesn't take too much to look at the first, second, third, fourth layers of Roman Catholicism and its history to say there's a lot of problems there as well. And if you're going to the Roman Catholic Church to fix their problems, go with God, my friend. Godspeed. Because theirs are beyond the documentation area. There's so many internal things that are wrong with the Roman Catholic Church. And then you add the dogma. Then you add the Marian doctrine. Then you add all these other elements to the Roman Catholic Church on top of what's already screwed up. And when I sit down and talk to my most knowledgeable Roman Catholic friends, and I ask them about this, and, well, we don't believe that. Well, I'll show them a pope 2 popes ago who did believe that. Yeah, well, we don't believe that. Well, the current pope believes that. And so, then, it's not about the pope. Wait a minute. And so, yes, Anglicanism has seen its better day and will again. Roman Catholicism has seen its better day, and we pray we'll see a better day again. But you can't leave Anglicanism for Roman Catholicism and say you're seeking a more pure religion, more pure doctrine, more pure church. On paper, it might be a little bit more pure, but in practice, it's more screwed up than Anglicanism. It's a reality. And I say this because I sent all my kids to Roman Catholic schools throughout their lives. And I remember sitting through an 18-minute Eucharist where the priest was able to enunciate every word through the Eucharist, give us 5-minute homily, get us all the way through, and hand it all out in 18 minutes. Just... yes, there's problems. So, disappointing, not surprising.
Well, let's go and get offer some details.
Sure.
Michael Nazarali was born in Pakistan to a Christian family. There is some controversy on this point, but it is said by some that he was reared or educated in Catholic schools and reared as a Catholic. And so some are saying this is a return to the Roman Catholic Church for him. Others are saying he was always a Christian, so this really doesn't matter. But as a young man, he was educated and ordained into the Church of Pakistan clergy. Had a brief career in the pastoral ministry and then became a bishop at a very early age in Pakistan. He was threatened by Muslim extremists, and essentially he resigned his episcopate and moved to England, where he earned a doctorate from Cambridge. He's a very well-educated man, very articulate, and then became the general secretary of the Church Mission Society, one of the great ancient mission societies, and that comes in the evangelical respect, from the evangelical wing of the church, and then was elevated to be Bishop of Rochester in the Church of England, I believe in 96, and retired in 2004, I believe, or later, excuse me. He was there a good long time. He was there from the beginning with the GAFCON movement. He was involved in various activities within the Church of England to turn it around. But at the same time, he was also involved in the mainstream activities of the Church of England. He was the chairman of the working group that in 2004 prepared what it was called the Rochester Report on Women in the Episcopate, which recommended that women be ordained into the episcopate. And as chairman, he was basically supportive of its conclusions. Now he is, and he's written a great number of books on the Anglican way and Anglican approach to this or that. After his retirement, he continued to write and was an active conference speaker around the globe. However, last year, 2 years ago, when we were getting up, the AMIE and other groups in England started, they were going to be the next ACNA. Michael Nazarali didn't really want to play in that arena.
He was approached by people we know and asked, could you help in leadership in this launch we have in the Church of England, not in the Church of England, on the shores of the UK, to help start the AMIE type organizations. And he, from what we hear, he just didn't, wasn't available to do it, or couldn't do it, or didn't want to do it. So,
yeah, he didn't really want to be part of the actual work of renewing and rebuilding the institutions. He felt much happier in writing about what needed to be done than actually doing what needed to be done. And most recently, and now we have this turn of events. And in his letter, and in the press release from the Ordinariate, the Church of England, that Catholic entity set up to receive Church of England members into the Catholic Church, and also maintain their liturgy and some traditions and things like that, he laid out in great detail all that was wrong with the Church of England. And I really didn't disagree with any of the things that he said.
No, he knows what's wrong.
And my difficulty is he doesn't tell us what's right about the Catholic Church, to the extent that he does not say, I've made a mistake. In other words, I am disappointed because I thought better of him, and that he's jumped ship, not because he says, I've had it all wrong these years. My support for the reformers, my support for women bishops, all this and that, I now see was mistaken, and I see that the Vatican, the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, is truly the vessel God is going to use for the evangelization of the world in Christ. If someone has that conscious decision where they've arrived at the Catholic answer is the correct and only answer, then there's an imperative that they become a Catholic Church and leave that institution where they are. I'm not hearing that out of Michael Nazarali. I'm hearing, I've given you all these great ideas, the Anglican world, and you just haven't done what I wanted you to do. Therefore, I'm picking up my marbles and going home. Going to join a new game. So, now, this involves my reading his mind, so please don't say this is news, facts. It's just my opinion that he never was quite the team player, never quite ready to go in and actually do the hard work, which means interacting with people on a one-to-one level and in building institutions and building structures, as opposed to standing at a podium and telling people what he thinks.
But, let's be honest, he did correctly identify what was wrong. He just he didn't offer a solution that could be worked upon by people like himself.
That in a nutshell, the spirit of the secular age had infected the Church of England, and he's now reached the point where he doesn't see any hope for it. Well, from my perch, I agree with everything that he said. The spirit of the age has infected the Church of England. But it's infected the Roman Catholic Church in England and in Germany especially just as much. There's a synod starting, or if it's already started, in Germany that wants to have women clergy, women priests, women deacons, that wants to bless same-sex relationships, marriages. And it's going to eventually get there. It's going to happen because the Germans basically pay for the operations of the Catholic Church. So you follow the money. And so he's jumping out of a sick institution and joining another sick institution. Instead of staying to try to plug the holes in the boat that is sinking, he's jumping into a bigger boat that is sinking, and maybe sinking at a faster rate.
Sure. Well, yeah.
But so this is now, again, we come from an American perspective, where the American Catholic Church is the Church of Theodore McCarrick, where the big Catholic news of the week is how many hundreds of thousands of children molested by Catholic priests in France. So the position of the Catholic Church vis-a-vis the Anglican way in the United States is vastly different from the situation in England and other parts of the world. I really can't think of... in other words, he had a course laid open to him, that was followed by, Keith Ackerman and Jack Eicher and people of William Wantland and or Bob Duncan, people of Catholic mind in liturgy. But he didn't choose that option. He chose to instead go not into the Catholic Church, but into the Anglican Ordinariate. So he's half Catholic, half Anglican. But you really can't be half Catholic, because you have to accept the Immaculate Conception, the doctrines on papal fallibility, the sacrifice of the Mass, so on and so forth. Things that as Anglican, he wasn't really that enthusiastic about.
It would be interesting if, whilst the German Roman Catholic Church is discussing adding female clergy to the rolls, if he now opposes that. If he writes to the side where he opposes the stuff he once supported. That would be interesting. George, I think we've covered the Michael Nazarelli stuff probably more than we should have. But the Anglican world woke up yesterday and said, what? And I saw lots of comments on Facebook who said, I'm not surprised, I am disappointed. And that's what George and I offer. If you wake up every morning, you say the church is screwed up, the Apostle Paul, the writer of Revelation, so many other characters throughout Christian history agree with you. The church always needs to be at a place where it's in humility and serving the living God. It's not always there. George, let's move on to some more news. We're hitting Roman Catholic news again. A Roman Catholic bishop, I'm sorry, I have some traffic pulling through the RV park here, has said that you, as a Roman Catholic, have the right to refuse the vaccine. And it's a bigger story, because he talks about they did use in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine aborted cells of a fetus, the stem cells in developing the vaccine. You have the right to refuse if you want to. That's cool, because we don't hear a lot from the religious leaders except the kooks as to what you can do or not do with the vaccine, George.
Yes, Timothy Broglio, the Roman Catholic Archbishop to the military forces in the United States, issued a letter supporting the right of servicemen and women to refuse to receive the COVID vaccine out of a matter of conscience. Now, Broglio said he's had the vaccine and he encourages people to get it, but he knows that there are people who have moral reservations. He says now the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines were made with stem cells that are so remote from any abortion or things of that nature that the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, CDF, said that there is no illicit nature to this vaccine. They're fine. However, Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a different matter, and that raises the abortion question is validly raised there. Now, stop it for a second. The Moderna and Pfizer stem cells, a whistleblower has come forward to say, well, they actually were made from aborted fetuses too. So the statement of fact in the beginning of his letter that Moderna and Pfizer are clean on this abortion level is now in dispute, but that's not the purpose of our raising this. What he is saying, though, that it basically comes down whether abortion or any other moral issue is at issue, you have a right to follow your conscience. And I'm going to read a portion of the letter. He quotes Pope Paul VI. And in all his activity, a man is bound to follow his conscience in order that he may come to God, the end and purpose of life. it follows that he is not forced to act in a manner contrary to his conscience, nor, on the other hand, is he to be restrained from acting in accordance with his conscience, especially in matters religious. So what Broglio is saying is that no one should be forced to receive a COVID vaccine if it would violate the sanctity of their conscience. So this provides cover, if you will, for, I think it's only a small percentage of the armed forces right now have refused the COVID vaccine. But if they don't get it by the end of this month, they will receive a general discharge with no military benefits. But this also applies to firemen in Los Angeles, and school teachers, and in New York City, airline pilots with Southwestern American Airlines, nurses. It applies to all people that the Catholic doctrine or teaching, or Christian teaching in general, recognizes the right of individual conscience. Now, there is a point that he didn't mention that I've seen raised, which I think is a good one, is that the Nuremberg trials had what were called the doctors' trials in 47 and 48, where the Nazi doctors who performed experiments on Jews and dwarves and other people in the name of science, they were condemned out of hand. And the Nuremberg protocols were released that essentially said that you must give it is a war crime, a crime against humanity, to compel people to take a vaccine against their conscience, against their desires, because a human being has the autonomy of person. Now, that's not a religious statement. That's a legal statement. Now, it came from the Nuremberg trials, which don't set precedent for anybody. But there is again, Kevin and I both have been vaccinated. My wife is vaccinated. My children are vaccinated. All the staff at my office are vaccinated. But it's all by our own choice. And I think the matter here is the coercion of the state or your employer in the name of the state to force you to do something that violates your conscience. Christian teaching, as stated by this Archbishop, is that you just can't. That's just not all.
Yeah, I am pro-vaccine. I am anti-mandate. It's Kevin. I just, for some reason, being brought up as an American in the age of Ronald Reagan, I think individuals have some rights, and I'm sorry, but I think most people agree with me that we do have to have individual rights. But I also look back at my history. In order to go to schools in the 1970s, I had to have the smallpox, the polio, the whole host of shots they put in my arm just to go to school.
And you and I have these little yellow cards that say we have our yellow fever vaccine passports.
Yeah.
To go to Africa or let back into the United States, actually.
Yeah.
After having been to Africa.
And I would take the new malaria vaccine. I would have no trouble doing so because I know people who suffered with malaria. I
would just add that.
Go ahead.
I am repeating the argument. I'm not making the argument. One of the arguments that people raise when it's compared to the universal school vaccines is that those are vaccines, whereas the Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J shots are therapeutics. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? A therapeutic helps treat the illness or prevent its symptoms or manages it. A vaccine stops it. And these are not vaccines in the sense that there are many, many people. I've got 6 people in my congregation who have been vaccinated fully who caught COVID and need to get booster shots and follow-ups because these vaccines do not stop it like once and for all with smallpox or yellow fever. Yeah. They're therapeutic. You have to take it again and again and again. So that's the distinction that argument is made.
Sure.
That we need that we're not really dealing with vaccines, we're dealing with therapeutic drugs.
No, and it's just it's a strange question that we have to answer in 2021 in this century. You know, the value of vaccines, and the value of rights. I lift up higher the value of individual rights than the value that the vaccines are giving us. And I'm sorry, I just do. You know?
It's not been helped by the censorship we're seeing out of social media and the government, and that people still get news even if Facebook and Twitter don't want you to hear it. There's an NBA player who's had to sit out the rest of his season because he had the mandated vaccine that the NBA required of all its players, and within a month he has blood clots, which have ended his season and may end his career, that are due to his having received the vaccine. Now, I have read that not on the major outlets, and I've not seen it discussed by neutral experts. I've only seen it on anti-vaccine friendly sites. And I've seen nothing about it in the pro-vaccine sites. So I don't know if it's true or not. But the point is, because we don't have an open and honest debate about these issues, people don't trust Dr. Fauci. They don't trust the government because they have had experience with being lied to on these issues. You don't need a mask because it won't help, is what Dr. Fauci was saying. And what he really was saying is that we want all healthcare workers to have masks, so we don't want you to buy them up. Once there are enough masks being made, you need a mask. Why didn't we not need a mask then, but now we need it? Yeah. Well, because I was lying to you because I didn't want you to rush and buy out all the masks at Walmart. So the lack of trust is exacerbating this pandemic.
Well, it is. And the trust from people like Evan. I am fully vaccinated. I got vaccinated in April so that I could travel and visit places around this nation. I arrived here to Mammoth National Cave. It's a federal national park of the United States of America. And on it, the big sign on the front door says, anybody who opens and walks into this building must be wearing a mask regardless of your vaccinated status. No, what's the point of being vaccinated? Kevin's brain says. No, there's more. You are about to walk into the largest cave system known to mankind. 428 miles of cave system is under our feet, and you get to go in there. It's vast. It's called Mammoth. Because it's we consider it a federal building, you have to wear your mask while you're in the cave. What is the point of the vaccination if I can't walk around without a mask? And so that's where you lose Kevin's trust. If and yes, people are in the comments, but Kevin. I know, it's still a trust issue. You can butt me all day long. It's still, you've lost my trust when you can't make the good distinction of why I got vaccinated and still have to wear a mask. So,
in the development where I live is a Southwest Airlines pilot who owns a house. And I'll occasionally see him and chat when I'm walking the dog and whatnot. And he's been home last week or so. And I don't know him that well, but I just know enough to say hello and to chat. And I said, so what's really happening with Southwest? Are you guys on a walkout? He said, no. Well, what's going on? He said, well, there's some people who have walked out on the disease, but 80% of Southwest's pilots are former military. And they've come out of a certain tradition and certain training, and they recognize unlawful and authoritarian orders. And what's happening is that there are people who, out of principle, will not take the vaccine because they're being forced to. And if they're going to get fired, they're all taking their accumulated vacation time. And it's not a sick out or a walkout. It's just these guys know that they refuse to do it, so let's use my vacation days, and their union contract allows them to take it. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much picket lines and walking out or the joke, bad weather. It's been great weather down here in Florida. It's anticipation of being fired, which is now off the table. The president of Southwest backed down. But what you saw basically Southwest Airlines conforming to a government mandate, which really has not been codified into the law. It's just a press release at this point.
Just a press
That's
release,
another
yeah.
topic.
No.
Conforming to government orders, and then finding that only 20% of its pilots need to walk away, and they're out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've had to reverse that for business decision purposes, because what happens when 40% of the firemen in New York walk out, or Los Angeles, are fired, or take accumulated vacation pay and this and that. The fire services won't work. The police won't be. You won't get a response to your 911 call. Not because the police don't want to, but because there are only 3 guys on.
I'm assuming nobody from Washington, D.C. is watching this. This is why I'm going to say this. Go out to the 30,000-foot level. In a year, we're going to have elections again for senators and congressmen. What is the populace going to do in their trust of this government that is mandating the vaccine on so many different levels? I see another wave of 1993, which wiped out Bill Clinton's power over the Senate. If the mandates stay, and especially you watch in places like Virginia, which has kind of been Democrat for the last 6 or 7 years, turning out in Republican form, and they're going to maybe vote in a new Republican governor, and it's because of the things like the mandate. And it's not that. The problem with the mandate in America is that you're forcing people to do things they don't want to do, or they would do normally, but they don't like the mandate. Many pilots would normally get the vaccine. What really pisses them off is the mandate. So,
it's called the consent of the governed. When the elites or those in power no longer have the consent of the governed, then their days are numbered. Then they're in trouble. Either they have to move into authoritarianism to keep themselves in power, or they fall out of power. I know so many bishops in the Episcopal Church, ACNA, Church of England, who are authoritarian and who tell their clergy what to do, and the clergy will only do it if anybody's looking. And basically, the authority the bishop has is not moral or spiritual; it's punitive.
Yep.
That can only go so far. And at a certain time, the people, at least in America, will stand up and say, no more, no mas.
All done. Get out of the pool. Starting over. George, we have good news also. Province of Alexandria had its inauguration, so to speak. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday of last weekend, and even on to Sunday, the province of Alexandria, which is based in Cairo and covers North Africa and the Horn of Africa down to Egypt, Ethiopia, Egypt, all the way over, was instituted. And you had a gathering of primates and archbishops, Justin Welby, Foley Beach, and other African and GAFCON and Global South leaders were present at All Saints Cathedral in Cairo for the inauguration of this province. And its new leader, Archbishop Sammy, just forgot his last name. Apologize.
That's all right.
It was seated, enthroned as Archbishop. He's also Bishop of Egypt. And so we now have 42 official Anglican provinces. We have some in formation. We have some that are real but not recognized.
You say 42, I say 43. It's a math.
Actually, 44, because we're Anglican Church of Brazil and
that's
the
right. Yeah.
Anglican Church of North America, functioning as provinces and whatnot, and are recognized by the vast majority of Anglican provinces, other Anglican provinces, just not by the ACC in Canterbury. So it's good to see the it's good to see the development and being able to stand and develop their own ethos. Now, one thing Americans need to keep in mind is just because someone is opposed to the innovations of the Episcopal Church doesn't mean they're on the same wavelength as you are on every other issue. And this was especially hit home because we had a little brief post where Archbishop Sammy wrote a letter about the valiant Egyptian army and their glorious victory in the 1973 Yom Kippur War, which was basically celebrated last week. And for most Americans who are even moderately pro-Israel, or most Americans who follow the news, it wasn't an Egyptian victory. What happened is Israel captured the Golan Heights and were initially pushed back, but managed to rally and drive the Egyptians out of all but a tiny bridgehead in the Sinai. And Henry Kissinger personally intervened and said, stop, don't defeat the Egyptian army. We've got them on the ropes. They'll negotiate with us now, but don't embarrass them like you're embarrassing the Syrians. Mm-hmm. So,
hold on. If you went to war,
not every global South in other words, you need to world politics does not walk hand in hand with theological orthodoxy from an American perspective.
From Sammy's perspective, they went to war. They didn't die. That's victory. Because, any Westerner who looks at that war at that time, Egypt was going to push Israel into the sea. Mm-hmm. And that was their goal. We're wiping this off the face of the earth once and for all. And it didn't happen. And Israel survived to another day, to fight another day. And it was an incredible embarrassment for Egypt. That's the history. And clearly it's the history we learned in the West. Different history in Egypt. Egypt, I guess they teach that Joseph and Jesus were refugees in Egypt, and Egypt helped them.
No. That was Justin Welby. Jesse Jackson was famous for saying at a Democratic National Convention that, after all, Mary was an unwed mother, too. Jesse, not in the way that you're talking about it.
And Jesus was homeless. He would always say Jesus was homeless.
Jesus was homeless. And the other big sort of liberal talking point is the news that Jesus was a refugee too. Mary and Joseph took Jesus and fled into Egypt when Herod was murdering the innocents. Well, Jesus didn't stay in Egypt and collect government benefits and so on and so forth. And it's not the same thing. But of course, Jesus was a refugee too, says Justin Welby. God.
Yeah. And trust me, Egypt did not know Jesus was there. Otherwise, Herod would have found out.
And they didn't give him a free college education.
No.
And Jesus didn't chase down a senator into a bathroom in Cairo.
Crazy times. It's so crazy that you and I can have a show talking about all things Anglican and people watch it. That's how crazy this is, George. Any last stories? Yeah, we had one here. I saw Ghana. You wanted to talk about it quick?
Well, quick one, Ghana. Ghana is debating a gay rights legislation to bring Ghana in line with America, Britain, the EU are basically pressuring the Ghanaian government to adopt Western standards on homosexuality and marriage. And so the government is complying because they rely on aid and trade, and the US and Britain can push them around. This pressure was halted in the Trump administration, was very strong in the Obama administration. Now it's back with a vengeance. So Ghana is on the radar of the liberals in the State Department. And so this pro-gay legislation allowing gay marriage, gay rights, gay adoptions, all this stuff is before the Ghanaian government. The Anglican Church in Ghana, there are 12 Anglican dioceses in Ghana, and they form the Anglican internal province of West Africa, of Ghana, have come out saying this is wrong. The Bible is quite clear on human sexuality and the teachings. We stand by the Bible, we stand by the official position of the Anglican Communion, and we urge our government to reject the gay rights, the LGBT LGBTQ plus agenda being shoved down our throats by the West. They're joined in this by the Catholic Church and the Muslims. So I don't think it's going to pass in Ghana. So at least the Ghanaian president can go back to the State Department and say, "Well, we tried, but look,
listen, your mandate didn't work here. Yeah,
we're still a democracy. You can't tell us what to do that much." And so this is, this is the reality on the ground in Africa, that the U.S. and the EU and Britain are twisting the arms, along with many, many international NGOs, are twisting the arms of governments to basically be recolonized. This time with not settlers on the ground, but ideologies on the ground. That you must, if you take our money and if you support, and if you want us to play fairly with you, you must think as we do. You may not have an African approach to life. You must have an American or an English approach to life. And many, many African nations find this grossly offensive, and it's not working. And the church in Africa, parts of Africa, not South Africa, South Africa is divided into liberal and conservative wings, has been standing up for the African culture, African understanding of man's anthropology, relationship to God and to each other. So good news out of Ghana.
Yeah, well, in reality, Anglican Unscripted episode 691 was a good news show. It's a transparent show. We tell you the truth about what we know and what you need to know. And we try not to hold anything back, whether it's a character we love, like Michael Nazarali, or a character we despise. I'm not going to name any names here. Nope, not going to name names. Or a wonderful fictional character named James T. Kirk. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Congrad. You've been watching episode 692 of Anglican Unscripted.